help preserve our precious wildlife.
Welcome back to Suffolk County Today. I'm County Executive Bob Gaffney, and with me today is Mike Falcone, the Acting Commissioner of Labor for Suffolk County. Mike, you're the Acting Commissioner because the confirmation process has not yet been completed.
That's correct.
We expect that it will be completed shortly.
Yes, ma'am.
Meanwhile, you're taking over perhaps one of the most difficult positions in Suffolk County, Commissioner of the Department of Labor, Labor Commissioner, at a time when the unemployment rate is the highest it's ever been in Suffolk County,
Yes.
when it's doubled over the last several years up to the point where it's, I guess, about 7.7, 7.8% unemployment.
Correct.
Now, given all of those things that I've just spoken about, given the unemployment rate, what is it that we can do in the Department of Labor to try to make it a little bit easier for those who are unemployed? And in fact, what are some of the main functions of the Department of Labor?
Well, the Suffolk County Department of Labor has a multitude of services, one of which we are involved deeply in mediation and arbitration with unions and businesses that come to us to mediate some of the labor disputes they have. We are directly involved with Suffolk County PERB, the Public Employment Relations Board, and we mediate with the 9 county unions with certification and or decertification of union members in Suffolk County. We are also involved in dispersing a variety of statistical analysis and information with respect to the economic indicators or the analysis of information with respect to the pulse of the county. We got 6,000 inquiries last year with respect to wages and hours information, demographic data. We have involved last year in a biannual survey which surveys 36,000 employees in Suffolk County in an attempt to find out what the demand market occupation is. Although we got a good response back, 52%, the labor market is not so good out there. The Department of Labor also administers a variety of job training programs funded through the State Department of Labor, the State Department of Social Services, and the federal government. We deal mainly with job training programs to help people that are unemployed, and our work is really cut out for us lately.
Now, it seems to me that with the kind of unemployment rate that we have in Suffolk County, and of course the fact that when a man or a woman becomes unemployed, they lose their job, something like that happens, they go on unemployment benefits for a while, and then if they're still unable to find a job, at that point, what happens? They then go on social services, presumably some of them, and is it at that point that the Department of Labor deals with the Department of Social Services, or is there a point sooner than that where there's an intervention between labor and social services?
Well, the variety of programs we have can deal with people who have certain eligibility criteria in order to participate in the programs. We administer the Job Training Partnership Act, which is called JTPA, and in effect people who are eligible for that program must meet certain eligibility criteria with respect to previous income and size of family. Public assistance people, are automatically eligible for JTPA. We administer a variety of dislocated worker programs geared specifically to help those people that have been displaced by layoffs, economic cutbacks, or relocations outside of Suffolk County.
Now that's to get them back into the job market. To get them back into the job market, that's correct. And we can offer a variety of services, job training services, workshops, resume preparation, testing, job training and or retraining to make their skills a little bit more advantageous to the economy of Suffolk County. We deal very heavily with the Department of Social Services in the administration of the JOBS program, which is a federally mandated welfare reform program that every state in the United States must participate in. We see all of the employable people that are on public assistance referred to us by the Social Services Department. They are mandated to come to the Department of Labor for program services. That will include job training, job placement services, workshops, and testing. We develop a career plan for everybody, and we try to, in effect, say that these are the steps we're going to take to try to move this person off of unemployment, off of public assistance, back into the mainstream, back into the labor force, so they can be more self-sufficient. Now, Mike, you're as a 21-year veteran of the Suffolk County Department of Labor.
Yes.
So you've been, I guess, through the ranks of the Department of Labor to the point now, obviously, where you've risen to be commissioner,
Yes.
acting commissioner.
pending the designation or
Yes.
confirmation of the Department of Labor. You must have seen a great deal during the 21 years dealing with labor matters internally within the Department of Labor. Is this as bad as you've seen it, the economic climate and the unemployment situation?
It's almost as bad, not quite, but almost as bad as the last recession.
Which would have spanned the periods of when?
In the 70s, 76, 77, 78.
Yeah, okay. It's the one I remember.
Yeah, we were very much affected and part of the same efforts that we're doing right now. The thing that disturbs myself and other people is that we don't see any visible signs yet of the recession and the economy improving. With the loss heavily of the defense industry out here, which was the mainstay, we always were able to get back to the defense industries, the Grummans, the Republics, the Eaton AILs, those kind of corporations which are now laying off people or closing down. We found ourselves in need as a county to attract new business, new activity to revive the economy of the county. And I think that the Labor Department, based upon its expertise over the years, can certainly lend a hand in the economic redevelopment of Suffolk County.
Well, as you know, Mike, one of the things that I had talked about early on about doing in Suffolk County was putting a tremendous new emphasis on economic development and economic revitalization. And we talked about almost an integration of the functions of labor, of economic development and planning, because planning, economic and economic development go hand in hand with the labor functions, because that's what's going to administer the jobs that are created and so forth by our economic development plans. What would you see as possible areas in which economic development would interact closely with the Department of Labor?
Okay, we have a planning unit, a planning staff that is geared towards grants writing. It is the unit that goes after the money. And we are pretty aggressive. If there's money out there, Suffolk County is out there to get it. We do not plan county affairs, so to speak, but our expertise in that planning area, based upon the demographic information we have, can certainly lend itself as a sister agency to the economic development concept. We also have been involved for years in the private sector. Although we cannot offer people attractions to come to Suffolk County, tax abatements, things like that, or prevent those employees from leaving Suffolk County, we do have over the years developed a very good rapport with employers where we create jobs and have created jobs over a period of time to help the people that participate in our programs get work.
I know one of the sources of information that we intend to rely upon, and in the course of meeting with George Gatta, who's the Deputy County Executive for Planning and Economic Development, we've been talking to some local bankers who for us are a source of information about their own clients in as much as who's having difficulty, what business or what corporation is thinking of leaving Long Island, what businesses are might thinking of coming to Suffolk County. So that's a tremendous advantage to be able to talk to somebody like that and be able to target those businesses that need specific county help. The Department of Labor, with your vast resources of dealing with all of these companies in connection with so many different programs that you operate, could also work then as a terrific resource for us, so that if you locate or if you identify a company that's having some economic problems or some kind of a difficulty that is causing them to think about relocating to North or South Carolina, that interreaction between economic development and planning and labor is one that's critical.
Yes, yes.
What other kinds of functions can the Department of Labor play in helping us get out of this kind of a recessionary period, other than just, you know, and I shouldn't say just because it's a tremendously important function, but other than dealing with those who are unemployed and trying to put them back to work? Are there any other functions that labor can perform in order to assist us in coming out of the difficulties?
Under the Job Training Partnership Act, and this is basically essential for any municipality throughout the United States that runs the Job Training Partnership Act program, is the creation of a private industry council, which in short terms is called the PIC.
Right.
The PIC is a group of individuals in business, in the private sector, in the public sector, from minority business, from the educational community, that has been working with the Labor Department for a number of years now in helping them to develop jobs in the private sector. We think that the PIC can play a very active role in assisting in this total concept of looking for something else out there that can, in effect, replace the loss of jobs. We have lost thousands of manufacturing jobs on the island over the past few years, and the economic situation, as we see in the Labor Department, is getting very, very desperate in some instances. The welfare caseload is going up. And it's not just those people that we think are the people that are on public assistance. It's those people that are losing their jobs now as a result of the recession that find no other way to go but onto public assistance.
I think most people probably labor over that same misapprehension that that I have from, prior to having been exposed to some of the information, which is that those people that are on social services are primarily from, from disadvantaged neighborhoods that have poor educations and a number of other things.
Correct.
The fact remains in Suffolk County, or the fact is that many of the people on social services are people who worked for Grumman,
Exactly.
who worked for AIL, who
Exactly.
worked for Republic,
Exactly.
who had good high-paying jobs, who
Exactly.
had families to feed,
Exactly.
and because of downsizing of these corporations were left without a job and without a place to go to, and just need assistance until they can get into a new area or can get into something where their skills can be fully utilized. And I guess that's the part where that's played by the Department of Labor.
Absolutely.
What kinds of training programs are available then?
We offer a variety of training programs. We offer programs in vocational skill training, in computer operations, in machinist training, in clerical skills. We try to always gear our training programs against the demand market occupations. Again, with the economy not being as good as we would like it to be, we are somewhat limited. But we have had very, very good success over the years. As a matter of fact, through our efforts and the Department of Social Services efforts last year, working jointly and working cooperatively together, which is essential here, we've saved the county $7 million in welfare costs.
Well, there's a lot to be said for the efforts that you'll be making. And there's also a lot to be said for anyone who would wish to serve as Commissioner of Labor during these very, very difficult times. Mike, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Bob. It's my pleasure.
It's a pleasure. I hope we get a chance to talk some more on this show and at other times.
I hope so. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you for joining me today on Suffolk County Today. My guest has been Mike Falcone. Thank you. It's a pleasure having you with us.
TV 6.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Senior Com, a production of the Suffolk County Office for the Aging. I'm Adelaide Silkworth, the director of the office, and I am also an assistant to the county executive, Mr. Peter F. Cohallen. With me today to talk about a most important subject to our senior citizens is a colleague of mine from Suffolk County government. I'd like you to meet Mike Falcone. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Adelaide. How are you?
Good. We're going to talk today about a subject that's near and dear to both our hearts, I know, since you are a staff member of the Labor Department, and you are concerned with the same thing I'm concerned with, and that's finding jobs for older workers who want to work.
Yes, we are.
And before we get started on that interesting subject, I thought Mike might tell you a little bit about the alphabet soup that we all work with. Mike, how about telling us a little bit about something we call JTPA, and what is it different from something else that we called CETA?
Okay.
That's a large order, isn't it?
Okay. Well, the Job Training Partnership Act, or JTPA, basically is a replacement for the CETA program, which was the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act. Now, the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act was a program that was funded by the federal government that lasted for roughly 6 years. And at that time, the federal government poured billions of dollars into emergency jobs programs, which they called CETA, in an effort to get people back on the employment area and back off the welfare rolls so that we can get them and the economy moving again. Certainly at the time of, and at the height of the CETA program, we were talking about double-digit inflation at its highest. We were all waiting online probably for a couple of hours for $5 worth of gas. And of course, we were dealing with an economy and an unemployment rate that was over 10%. Under the new administration, the JTPA program is indeed a job program, but to give you the contrast in scope is something I probably should take a few minutes out to compare. At the height of the CETA program, the Suffolk County Department of Labor, who is responsible for all job training programs in the county, was funded to the tune of better than $52 million. That's a lot of program money. We had the opportunity and the availability of staff and program design to offer literally thousands of jobs, both in the private and in the public sector. Education and training programs that range anywhere from tractor-trailer driving to machinist to word processing to electronic mechanical drafting. With the coming of the new administration and the severe cutbacks in social programs, one of the first things that were cut out of the CETA program was the portion called the Public Service Employment Program. Now, the Public Service Employment Program put to work thousands of people, not only in Suffolk County, but throughout the United States in emergency jobs. These people worked in towns and school districts, in nutrition sites, in county agencies, in the various parks departments and the health departments. And in the old regulations in the CETA, as long as the program was funded, those people had a job from year to year. And although the Labor Department made extensive efforts to move these people out of those emergency jobs in the private sector, and we did do that with a tremendous amount of people, some of the people just hung on, never realizing that sometime, someday, that rainbow might come to an end. Well, it did come to an end. One of the first cutbacks in CETA under the Reagan administration was the cutback of the Public Service Employment Program. That eliminated, within a 2-week period, 1,300 people in the county who had to be let go because the funding no longer existed. We at the Labor Department felt that if that kind of effort nationwide would have resulted in literally several 100,000 people, or maybe 500,000 people unemployed, that the public uproar might demand that a watered-down version of public service employment portion of the program would be reinstated. It never happened. The thinking then, of course, was then, well, maybe the federal government will take the money that they saved there and pump it into the private sector, creating more jobs and more training programs, and that never happened. And as all of us thought about what might happen, the economy got better. Double-digit inflation was controlled. The unemployment rate started to come down. And we, as consumers and as servants of the public, feel very good about that.
Yes, that has been a boon to all of us.
Okay, but what's happened to jobs programs? It almost looked as though the CETA program was not necessary. And finally, the final blow to CETA was September 30th of 1983, when the CETA program was completely eliminated. In its place, we have what is called the JTPA program, which is a very, very watered-down version of CETA.
There are programs available. As a matter of fact, we have programs available in the private sector for jobs, where we deal with and contract with employers for positions within their own organizations, where we share the cost of training as a result of a contract that would offer them a 50% reimbursement. We have training programs that we establish with public and private schools to teach marketable skills, where we pay the tuition and the cost of the book so that the student can learn a trade. We have an employability workshop which deals with assertiveness training and resume preparation and job search techniques. And we have the capability of a testing component which can measure the interest level, the mathematical skill, and the reading comprehension of people.
How do we fit our senior citizens into all of this? That's proving to be a task that we need to address jointly, don't you think?
Yes. There are several specific target groups that have been identified by the federal government under JTPA, and we in Suffolk County are no different than a prime sponsor. That's what they call us in Tallahassee, Florida, or Sacramento, California. There are 3 specific target groups, although we must serve the client population of the municipality that we serve. Number 1, not in this order, would be the youth. Number 2, again, not in this order, is veterans, in particular Vietnam and Vietnam-era veterans. And number 3, and the reason we're here, is the older worker, the 55 and over. There are specific areas where we must perform and statistically prove that we have serviced these areas of the client population.
Yes, well, you know, we have a grant also, and we are running a very modest employment operation in the Office for the Aging. And we do have another group in our county also involved with employing older workers, and that, actually we have 2 groups. One is sponsored by the AARP. And then we have the town of Babylon, and we will be showing you some field footage that Viacom shot involving the town of Babylon's program. So we have a lot of people out there trying to serve the older worker, and we really are making a concerted effort, in my view, to work together on this, because this is an outreach, really what you and I are doing today, in hoping to reach those people who are homebound, who might not know about all of this that's going on, to assist older people to find a job. And of course it's our job to reach out, to create what we call a job bank. Of course you do the same thing. And in many instances for the Office for the Aging to make use of your training program and you to make use of our contacts. So that between all of us we can find a job for those people who want to work. And we know not all of our elderly want to work, but you know differently.
Well, we have not only started an intensive effort with your agency, with the Office for the Aging, in helping to assist the senior citizens, not just under Title V, but to any senior citizens that might go to the Office for the Aging for assistance. We've also started, and we have begun a kind of a concerted effort in the town of Babylon for their Title V program. We have been putting our mobile office down there, and we have been doing that on a regular basis since April. We are actively participating with both their Tanner Park and Spangle Drive operations, so the outreach level has already started. We have had an open dialogue with the Smithtown Senior Citizens people, with Marge Larson down there. We had our van down there. We've gone down there and given them an orientation. So we have begun to reach out as best we can to not only help the senior citizens of Suffolk County, but to reach some of the program goals that the agency must meet under JTPA.
Because each one of these segments of the same goal, and of course the goal is to find a job.
That is correct.
For the person, has a little different cast to it. And so if your eligibility and whatever doesn't fly with a person, then you could turn them over to us, or possibly to the AARP program, also under Title V. And I think that's probably the way we're going to have to go. I don't know whether our viewers understood completely that the JTPA is in the private sector, you know, as contrasted with some of the jobs we can offer in community service employment. So, you know, there's a difference right there.
Okay, under JTPA, we have a special unit which is called the private sector module, and their responsibility is to deal with employees in the private sector, okay, who have specific needs to fill specific jobs in their company, in their store, in their factory. Those people will meet with one of our representatives of the agency and discuss the possibility of writing a contract to fill specific slots. During the course, if that contract is written during the course of the training, meaning that the person that we would send to that company, assuming that that person was hired and begins the training process, that person is being trained by the employer to learn the operation of his or her of plant or factory. We reimburse the employer 50% of the salary of that person during the course of the training, which can run anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. And that's a decided advantage to an employer because he gets to share 50% of the salary cost of that person.
Yes, and he also gets a tax break, too.
He gets a tax break at the end of the year, called a targeted tax credit, which he can claim on his corporate income tax return. So bottom line, it is profitable for an employer and helpful for him to participate in these programs. Certainly, the criteria for referring people over is established by the employer. The qualifications and the minimum requirements for the job all are put together in what we call a job order, and that's what my staff uses to make referrals. There is a refinement of on-the-job training which is called customized training, and this is a step before the on-the-job training portion. It means that the employer wants to train in a classroom setting in his or her plant or factory, exactly perhaps on the type of equipment or machinery that is germane to that operation. So that's classroom training. Then that is followed by on-the-job training, okay? And all of this as part of the contract puts the onus on the employer that if he doesn't place a certain percentage of these people, that he does not get paid for that.
Well, I think that's a good idea.
Right.
Yes, now we are going to very shortly take a little break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about how you can get in touch with Mike Falcone or us at the Office for the Aging. And we're going to show you some field shots taken in the town of Babylon. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that van of yours.
Okay.
I think that's a marvelous outreach tool. You know, we have one too that we're trying desperately to keep on the road. And then between all of these facets of an employment program, I'm going to give some phone numbers. So I always tell our audience to be sure and have paper and pencil handy because we're going to be giving some phone numbers and locations. But we do believe that a goodly portion of the 164,000 senior citizens in our county might still want to work. Don't you think so?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
And for many of them, it is a question of real economic necessity. And so we should be prepared to help these people.
I agree.
So don't go away. Please get your pencils and papers ready, and we'll be right back.
Do you work for a living? Then you'll be interested.
Thank you for staying tuned to Senior Com, a production of the Suffolk County Office for the Aging. I'm Adelaide Silkworth, the director of the office, and I am also an assistant to the county executive, Mr. Peter F. Cohallen. With me today is a colleague of mine, also from Suffolk County, and he is Mike Falcone, program director of our own labor department. We've been talking about a very important topic in the lives of many of our senior citizens, and that's jobs. And Mike, we were, you know, maybe you'd like to tell our viewers just a little bit about the Labor Department. You know, what is your chief function? I don't think many of us really realize that.
Well, the major function of the agency, and has for its 18 years that has been in existence, of course, has been the running of federally funded jobs programs in the county. Of course, they do play another role in the county as we have a labor mediation department, which is extremely helpful in helping to mediate labor disputes between companies and strike-bound people. We played an active role recently in some of the local negotiations and whatever. So that is also a function of the Labor Department. But the primary function has been jobs programs,
Yes.
as we have discussed before.
And also that nice word that we hear a lot is developing jobs. That's
Yes,
one of
yes.
your functions.
Yes, yes.
Going out and looking and advocating perhaps for your clientele.
Right, looking wherever possible for jobs in the private sector, whether they range from jobs in factories or plants or to retail stores, wherever we feel that there's a need to fill particular slots.
Yes.
And we find it to be very, very successful.
We're going to have a look now, Mike, at somebody else who's doing a jobs program, and that is Joan Fortunatos of the town of Babylon, and she will be talking with some of the lucky people who have gotten jobs through everybody's efforts. So we're going to take a look now at that was. Don't you wish they all ended that way?
I certainly do.
And speaking of success stories, part of your plan for administering the JTPA is that you have to have a success story.
That's correct.
Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about your success rate in the past.
Okay. The Suffolk County Department of Labor, not to sound a little boastful, has always been a very aggressive and moving agency in job programs throughout the United States since their inception. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of the CEDAR program, we were the first deliverer of these jobs programs in the Eastern region to be funded and approved by the federal government. And that area takes in all of New England and the Eastern Seaboard down to the Carolinas and includes Puerto Rico. We also were the third deliverer of CEDAR services in the country to be funded. So we have a record of being able to be quick, aggressive, and movement, as dictated by the fact that we were funded to the tune of over $52 million at one time. We don't get that money unless we have a success story. And the success story we have and have always had is a very aggressive movement of people from our programs back into the private sector, back into meaningful employment. And over the years, that percentage has never gone below a 70% rate.
It's very good, isn't it?
Which is
It's
really
very
kind
good.
of high.
Yes, that's very high, because we compare that to our own Title V program, where we are also required to move people along, but we cannot do nearly as well.
Right.
Because the age of some of our participants works against that.
Yes, I understand.
And would you like to tell us a little bit about this special 3% grant?
In addition to the regular Job Training Partnership Act programs that we have, there is another grant that the Labor Department has, and that's discretionary money that is given to deliver of these jobs programs, which we call ourselves a special delivery agency. We have a Title III program that is, we can only service the older worker. The program is designed to provide on-the-job training programs, education and training components, and participation in our employability workshops. And that is tailor-made for the senior citizens, and nobody else except someone 55 and over can get into that program.
I hope you're listening out there.
So that's a program that we're looking for senior citizens and the older worker to come to us for program needs, and there's a need for that.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. However, there are a couple of things in my mind that work against the older worker, and one of them is eligibility. And the other is the fact that many older workers do not want to work a 35 or 40-hour week. So maybe you'd like to comment a bit about a window we were discussing?
Yes. Under the Job Training Partnership Act, the prime sponsor or the special delivery agency that we are has the right to establish what they call a 10% window. What that represents is we can waive the eligibility criteria for certain groups of people in the client population. For us in Suffolk County, that will include senior citizens, older workers. Also a category for that is displaced homemaker. Another category is high school dropout. Another category is Vietnam veteran or Vietnam era veteran, which means that if the need is dictated by the counselor, we can waive eligibility criteria for those folks. Now, for the seniors, that is an opportunity for them not to have to worry about their Social Security, whether it'll be reduced, whether their pension or any other income would be reduced.
That's really critical right there.
Okay, so the window, although we don't have an inordinate amount of slots, we can put senior citizens into our programs, either under the traditional JTPA or the 3%,
the 3%.
under the 10% window.
Well, now, if we have successfully recruited some senior citizens from this program today, we need to tell them how to reach you, where you are, and where we are, So maybe we will be putting phone numbers up on the screen. So we ought to tell our audience where you are to start with.
Okay. We have 3 offices located in Hauppauge, an office in Babylon, and a satellite office in the county center in Riverhead. And the telephone numbers of those 3 offices are probably right now on the television screen.
Yes, they are on the screen, right. And I hope the pencils and papers are taking them down. Because if what you told me is true, and I have no reason to doubt it, there are jobs out there.
As I talk to you right now, we are... the capability we have right now is we have roughly about 950 to 1,000 open jobs.
Open jobs.
Okay?
Yep.
If any of the seniors out there, or if anyone else out there wants to schedule themselves, they merely have to call one of those telephone numbers
Right.
and come in
And
for a
make an
scheduled interview.
appointment,
That
and
is
they
correct.
should come in anyhow.
And they should come in anyhow.
You know, suppose you can't, they don't meet your criteria, you might be able to shift them over to us,
Absolutely.
or us to the program we looked at earlier.
Absolutely.
Somewhere in this setup, we might be able to help people, but if they don't come in, and if they don't call us, we don't know about them.
That's correct. That's correct.
And also, I want to remind you that if you wish to go through the Office for the Aging, our telephone number is 348-5319. And you can ask for Penny or her supervisor, Will Grant, who is instrumental in putting this program
Yes,
together, by the way.
Yes, I know.
Yes, and we do want to underscore the fact that this is a joint effort between the Office for the Aging, Suffolk County Labor Department, and the AARP program in Babylon.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking time out to come today.
Thank you,
It
Eva.
was most enjoyable.
It was my pleasure, and my thanks go out to the County Executive, Peter Cohalan, and Raymond Normandinger for allowing me to be here. And
Thanks
certainly
again,
your
Mike.
good office. Thank you.
He had sent my resume over, and I wanted to make sure that I knew what the resume looked like.
The Center for Employment, as it's called, opened after Labor Day, and this is the official opening. County Labor Commissioner Michael Falcone says it's a one-stop shopping center.
What makes this unique is the fact that, one, the system is totally and completely computerized. Number two, it is one-stop. What it means by one-stop is all the services are in one place. People don't have to jockey around from one physical geographic location to another.
The one-stop shopping like this, one career center where everything can, where you can file your unemployment application, and like as the commissioner said, at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, you can be on the computers trying to find employment and trying to network.
Issues this election year. Both candidates readily say it's flawed and promise to fix it. From limiting the time somebody can collect welfare to changing rules for eligibility, the rules for receiving public assistance have radically changed. Workfare, where welfare recipients actually work for their benefits, is one of the areas drawing the most criticism. It's been in practice in Suffolk County now for 3 years. How well is it working there, and how realistic is welfare reform on a national level? Joining us to talk about that is Suffolk Labor Commissioner Michael Falcone, who oversees one of the oldest and largest workfare programs in the country. Thanks very much for being here, Mr. Falcone.
My pleasure, Scott.
How is it working?
Well, Suffolk County Department of Labor, in conjunction with the Department of Social Services of Suffolk County several years ago, realizing that the welfare rolls were climbing as a result of several things. The loss of jobs on the island, the recession, found itself with the climbing welfare population. We found that in our previous practice of long-term training, although that long-term training for welfare recipients was good, we found that we had to get an immediate response and get some of these people back into the workplace. So we, in fact, incorporated welfare reform, as a lot of people are now using that as a buzzword, several years ago.
we mandated that people on public assistance, both the home relief people, which are the single individuals, and the FDC's family people, participate in workfare, which meant that it was no longer a state of a situation where somebody would come to us mandated by the Department of Social Services to report to the Suffolk County Department of Labor for program services. The reason they can come to us for program services, we administer all of the job training programs in Suffolk County at the Suffolk County Department of Labor, where we are funded with federal and state grants for training and retraining.
How do you train these people that come to you on public assistance who are looking for work, and where do you find the jobs? Where are the jobs?
Well, first of all, when they refer to us, they get assessed, and a career plan, and an in-depth assessment and career plan is made for each of these welfare recipients. They go through a supervised job search program where they are required to go out and look for work on their own. We put them through a one-week, very intensified, what we call job-related training program, where we explain to them all of the aspects of the Suffolk County Department of Labor and how we can help them find jobs. Since we're funded under the JTPA program, the Job Training Partnership Act, we have a variety of training and retraining programs that are available to welfare recipients who can go back to school or go to school to learn a marketable trade. And we have found that as by incorporating the welfare programs with JTPA, we have found that to be a wonderful tool to combine them. As a matter of fact, I was in Houston several weeks ago with the National Association of Counties and conducted a workshop on how well welfare reform and JTPA works in Suffolk County. The training programs, which are a variety of, somewhere in the neighborhood of 110 different training programs that can vary from computer training to fiber optics to technology and biotechnology, tractor-trailer driving, a whole variety of training programs, have provided a lot of the welfare recipients at the first, perhaps the very first opportunity for them to go out and learn a marketable skill.
Jack O'Connell, this sounds good on paper, you know, only so many years on public.
Rochester, Texas, Washington, D.C. In fact, he would have been here a little bit earlier, but Turk was driving. But anyway, yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, come on. Let me put this down. This campaign trail is pretty tough. You know, Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another one of our sessions of job training programs, in-house training, on things that we will be expecting to do down the road with respect to the agency and the one-stop, the Career Center, and customer satisfaction. I didn't prepare any long talk here, but I just wanted you to know that this is in keeping in complying with what our goals will be down the road and some of the things that we have established. I guess some of you already know that we probably heads up on several items as I go around to some of these conferences around the country. And our Career Center, probably one of the best in the country. I've seen several of them, and ours, I guess, unashamedly, is probably better than theirs. And the Career Center at Northrop Grumman, which is a career center, which was really the incubator for our project here in Hobart. And for some of you that don't know, that we're already preparing to open up a small career center in the Riverhead area to serve the eastern portion of Long Island, which we feel has been shortchanged over a period of time. So we're going to be spending some time today on going over some things, primarily broken down into two parts. Those of you who get to get 2 free lunches today, don't forget the door prize. Jack O'Donnell will be out there to collect at least $10 apiece. And so the first part is going to be fee for services, and the second part is going to be customer satisfaction. Now, the fee for services, just briefly, is an extension of some of the services that we're trying to get a handle on exactly what fee for services is. So maybe by the end of the day, we'll really know exactly what we're saying. But some of the things they're thinking about, for example, would be the Career Center, where eligible people can come through there and get the program services of the Suffolk County Department of Labor. The fee for services might mean that people that not ordinarily would be eligible for our program services, a dislocated worker, or they meet the JTPA eligibility, but somehow need help in finding employment, would be able to come to the Labor Department, and we would charge them a fee for the services that we perform. Of course, I will report all of those costs on my income tax return. So that's that's a possibility. It's also a possibility that some of the education and training programs that are offered by us could be determined that somebody could find a different type of training program that they might be eligible for and want to participate in and would pay for the training. So there's a whole bunch of things that could come out of this session today, and I think all of us will be interested in expanding that area. I just have a little thing I want to introduce our guest speaker all the way from California. Okay, and the gentleman's name is Tim Duncan. I just want to read a little brief paragraph about what he does. Tim is a broker of training programs and one of the renowned people around the United States that goes around and explains to SDAs like ours some of the things that are coming down with new program development as we go into the next year. And Tim has recently been associated with the New York State Association of Training and Employment Professionals, for which George Mason is the vice president. Okay, so we have a voice in Albany, and at the national level, I sit on the board of directors with the National Association of Counties Training and Employment Professionals, so we have the voice at the national level. So it works out pretty well for us. They really don't like when we show up because Suffolk County is not looked upon as an agency they want to deal with, because they know that when the money's out there, we're out there and we're probably going to get it. So let me just read you a little brief background about Tim. Tim is a professional trainer who previously worked as the operations manager for the Nova Private Industry Council in Sunnyvale, California. Mr. Duncan was instrumental in implementing fee-for-services activities, which generated approximately $757,000 in revenues. This equates to 22% of their non-JTPA funds. Nova received the President's Award for the nation's outstanding training program in 1992 and was honored as a model reemployment effort during a visit by President Clinton, Vice President Gore, and Secretary of Labor Reich in 1993. We tried to get those three fellows to come out to Suffolk County, but they said the jet lag was too much. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the facilitator of this program, Mr. Duncan. I think you're going to find that the next day and the next 2 days are going to be very informal. Tomorrow we'll talk about customer satisfaction. And you know that's been the theme of the agency for the last year and 2 months. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tim. Thank you very much.
People in a training program in businesses where we will actually pay for a training period. So that's an important aspect of our program also.
Judith Gordon, thank you very much. Dara Wells.
Okay, thank you, N.J. Burkett. I am so pleased to have with me Michael Falcone, who is Commissioner of the Suffolk County Department of Labor. You know, you have been so involved in this particular job fair. I just have to say that, Mike. How's it going?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dara. Pleasure to be here tonight.
Do you think our response warrants all this hard work? I know you and your volunteers have been putting in many long hours.
I think it does, and it shows the spirit of cooperation between the tri-state area in an unselfish attempt to try to crack this recession, which is crippling this part of the country. And things like this are very important for people to give their time and to work together to see if we can do some good. And I think it's going to work out pretty good.
I hear that we already have well over 1,000 jobs, so we've beat the last record we set.
Well, let's place 1,000 people in the 1,000 jobs, and then we'll talk about the success rate. But I think that's wonderful. I think that's a step in the right direction. And Channel 21 has to be complimented for doing something like this as a public service, and I think more of it should happen down the road.
More of it will happen, and you and your colleagues will be here, I hope?
Oh, absolutely. You can't keep us away.
Okay, I'll hold you to that. Michael Falcone, thank you so much for joining us. And now, let's take a look...
Issue, a program designed to explore and argue issues of special concern to Long Islanders. This week, a discussion on the Long Island economy. Have we turned the corner? Our guests are Arnold Gruber of the Association for a Better Long Island and Michael Falcone of the Suffolk County Department of Labor. Now, here is your host for At Issue, Bill Zimmerman.
Long Island has lost thousands of jobs in the past several years, perhaps 100,000. We've felt the effects of high taxes and a nationwide recession. as well as the streamlining of the defense industry now that the Cold War is over. Have we survived the worst of it, and does it now get better? Mr. Gruber of Mark Schroen and Company.
I believe that we are going to see an upturn. It's not going to happen right away. It will take the next few years for us to see an increase in the economy. There are certain signs showing now that there is an upturn, but it's going to be a slow upturn.
Have we bottomed out?
I think we've bottomed out. I think we're on the rise. But Long Island and the East Coast, as well as the West Coast, are feeling the effects more so than the middle of the country is feeling it. And the increase in taxes that we now have because of the new Tax Act are not helpful.
You're talking about income taxes?
The income tax.
On the higher income.
And also the real estate taxes on Long Island, being probably the highest in the country, they're counterproductive. And I think we have to do something to cut down on real estate taxes and give incentives for businesses to come back to the island and increase the growth on Long Island.
And in fact, you are involved or about to be involved in looking at the Nassau budget with an eye toward getting taxes down, I assume, and we'll get back to that in just a minute, as soon as I get a preliminary assessment of where we stand from Mr. Falcone.
Well, I'm not so sure if the economy on the island has really bottomed out completely. There are certain economic indicators around the country, and certainly some spotty ones on the island that have indicated that we might be coming back somewhat. But the problem we face, and we're going to continue to face for the next, more than the next few years, is that we don't have anything at all on the horizon to replace the 125,000, 130,000 jobs we've lost due to the cutbacks in the defense industry. That has been absolutely devastating. The downsizing of the military complex has adversely affected the island because it's been the mainstay of our economy probably back until the late 1930s. And we find ourselves now without that economic base, which has built a very high-tech, highly sophisticated employment force on the island. And we face these problems all the time because the Department of Labor, funded through special grants out of Washington to help dislocated workers, sees the story unfold day after day after day of people not being able to find employment in their fields. When Republic first closed down, some people thought that some of us were a little crazy when we said, kind of tongue-in-cheek, what would ever happen if we lost the defense contracts out on the island? Republic was just a piece of it, and we lost 5,000 to 8,000 jobs when Republic Fairchild closed down. But the thing that was good about that is that we were able to, the Labor Department included, and the State Labor Department, a lot of other agencies, we were able to find employment for lots of those people in other defense-oriented companies, Martin Marietta, Lockheed, Fairchild General Dynamics, Grumman, AIL, Unisys. That's not the case here. We have a highly trained labor force and nowhere for them to go except to be retrained into other disciplines, which we are attempting to do, or finding other means of employment, or in fact just leaving the island. And we will be one of the slowest areas in the country to fully recover. And what does fully recover mean? Does it mean we get back to the boom days of 1980? I don't think so. But a full economic recovery, I think, from what we can accept statistically, is probably 3-4 years down the road.
What is your sense of where these laid-off defense workers have gone?
Well, some have moved off the island.
To other similar jobs, or just retired entirely?
Well, the opportunities for similar jobs are few.
Right.
They have moved because they can't afford to live here. So then you bring in the high tax problem and the high utility problem, which affects all of us. The highest utility rates in the country, highest taxes of any area in the country. So for those people, losing their main source of income, they are unable to keep in a traditional moderate lifestyle that they were accustomed to. Others have gone on to other fields, other trades, have forced to take other jobs in other businesses
way below their personal capabilities and skills, only to try to keep body and soul, family together. We see that all the time. When they were making F-14s and all the defense equipment, these people made out very well. Their incomes were good. And now they have to adjust their lifestyle and are forced in some cases to take jobs that are nowhere near the skill capability.
Mr. Gruber, where do you expect these people to wind up, or how are we going to actually be able to incorporate them into the island economy in some way that makes sense, rather than having a nuclear physicist working at McDonald's or something?
I think what you're going to find is that people will have to be retrained into new types of jobs, but I think a lot of people will probably wind up leaving the island because of the fact that the jobs that they want have left the island. We are probably the highest cost, one of the highest cost areas in the country, and it's very expensive to live here. The types of jobs that are available will not be available to pay the types of, to provide the type of income that these people need. And so they're going to be forced to either live a lower lifestyle or look to live in a place where they can have the same lifestyle that they currently have.
Under those conditions, and we're talking, I guess, about 100,000 people, under those conditions, how can we turn the corner? It seems to me that if we are losing all these salaries, or people are going off the island, we're losing tax base. It means a bigger burden on the rest of us, and it becomes a pretty ugly spiral after a while.
I think that's the problem. It's a spiral. When your costs go up, and the only way you think you can solve the problem is by raising taxes, I think you have the wrong idea. You have to do tough decisions like business has done over the past few years, and cut costs, not increase taxes, so that people don't find that their cost of living goes up as much as it has over the past few years.
And Mr. Falcone, you said some retraining is now going on. What would you where would you tell a person who is an aircraft design engineer or something like that to go for retraining, and to be retrained as what?
Two of the areas that we feel are they're not Halley's Comet on the horizon, but at least there's a little glimmer of hope as far as demand market occupations are, and there's two, of course, the computer field and the healthcare field. We are an aging society, and we know that down the road there'll be a great need for people to be trained in the healthcare field.
Isn't there still some uncertainty in that field while we're looking forward to what's going to come out of Congress next year?
Yeah, well, that's another thing. It is difficult for us at the Labor Department to specifically identify and say, okay, because we have these federal programs where we are able to attempt to retrain some of these dislocated folks. And it's just not the dislocated. The economic problem is not just them. It's part of it. But the fact is that we have been able to train some of them or retrain them in some of those disciplines, and hopefully getting them back into the workforce. We don't exactly know that if we trained 1,000 people in these areas a year from now or 2 years from now, those are going to be the demand market occupations to fill. We knew that years ago if we trained them in mechanical work and engineering types of work and blueprint reading and job specifications, all those stuffs that were so related. I keep banging back at that defense industry, but it's like waking up one morning and finding out that the train from Port Jefferson just doesn't run anymore to New York, and you've got to fend for yourself to get to work. The train service is stopped, and we're looking to how are we going to get to work, and how are we going to get the economy of the island and people back to work. Another growing problem we have, which is looped into this whole scheme of things, is the people on public assistance. It's not just the stereotype that some of us may think that's the undereducated or the underemployed people. We're finding a growing number of people on public assistance who are educated, who have good business backgrounds, but are forced to go on public assistance because there is absolutely no way they can survive out here. And we deal with the Department of Social Services in what they call the JOBS program, which is the welfare reform program. And we attempt to work in getting people back to work who are on the welfare rolls. in order for them to reduce the welfare rolls and help them get some kind of semblance of life back together. Curious thing we find happening is that back when things were good economically, when we were dealing with the welfare population and not being as highly trained or educated as it is now to some extent, some of the jobs that we were able to offer to the welfare client, the entry-level job, the job that didn't require that much training, okay, are now being grabbed up by people who are looking for most anything. And we find that although there's nothing wrong with an entry-level job because it serves a specific area of the population needs, we find that so many of those jobs are being grabbed off by more highly trained or educated folks and leaves very little for that base. So we at the Labor Department deal with all types of unemployed people, the dislocated, the displaced, the disadvantaged, and it's pretty tough sledding out there.
I'd like to point out one thing. I think that the country in general has gone from a manufacturing background to a service background. There are more service jobs today than there were 10 years ago, and less manufacturing jobs. It's not just on Long Island, but it's nationwide, this problem. And I think that was one of the problems with NAFTA, that people were afraid that more and more manufacturing jobs were going to go off the island and out of the country down into Mexico. That is a problem, but hopefully there will be other jobs that will be created because of that will offset the downturn, the immediate downturn of certain manufacturing jobs going out of the country. I'm a proponent of the NAFTA and felt that it would, in the end, it would be good for the island and for the country in general.
Yeah, well, if you had a son or daughter now, a high school senior, what would you tell that teenager to major in college if you wanted him or her to stay here on the island?
Well, I have 3 kids. Thankfully, the last 2 of them are finishing college this year. And it's very difficult for them to find employment in general. One of them is getting involved in graphic design, a service organization. My son is working in marketing at a major company in the city, and my other daughter is still thinking about what she's going to do when she graduates. She's really not even sure what to get into. At one time, I always thought accounting, which is the profession that I'm in, was a good field, and it is a good field. It's a much tougher field than it's ever been before, and it's not as glamorous as it used to be.
A lot of the big accounting firms have sort of merged and had the same kinds of problems that other businesses have been through recently.
That's true, and a lot of the companies, both large firms and medium-sized firms, find that they've had to do certain things such as cut the overhead, cut the fat out. One of the things that we're trying to tell Nassau County is they really have to do the same thing that business has to do. You can't be all things to all people. You can't have all the services that you would like to have, and you have to find ways to consolidate and get the work done, and get it done, not less work done, but get it done at a cheaper price. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking into with our oversight committee.
You're going to be going through the budget line by line, Nassau County budget?
That's the only way to really do it.
Okay. Well, let us suppose that you find, for the sake of argument, $20 million that you can get out either by cutting fat or consolidating departments or whatever it is, whatever kinds of changes you make. You've got to then take that to people who have political constituencies and say, okay, Mr. Galata, okay, Mr. Yavoli, okay, whoever it is, you're going to have to close that park, and you're going to have to face the voters in a year or two and explain that to them. Isn't that where the rub comes in these public budgets?
Absolutely.
How are you going to do that?
We're going to bring it to the voters. We're going to let them know what things really have to be done, and let them nudge their elected officials to do the right thing. And that's really what it comes down to. The elected officials are concerned about getting elected all the time, and so therefore they're hesitant about doing any sort of cutting. It's easier for them to raise taxes than it is to cut expenses and to cut services. But sometimes you have to cut services. Sometimes it's not a matter of cutting the service, it's just doing the job a little bit more efficiently. And I think that's the type of thing that I would look for more so than cutting services, is how can we get the same job done and get it done more efficiently.
Now, in a sense, you take a big load off their backs as well. The onus now shifts from Galata or whoever to you, and Galata can say, gee, I really wanted you to have that park, but Mr. Gruber won't let me, hence it's not my fault.
I don't think that we're at a point where we're going to say to the public that you can't have a park. We're going to try and come up with ideas to cut cost, not necessarily cut services.
Well, I know everybody's going to try to do that. How many people do you think you have to lay off or can lay off and still not impact on service?
Sometimes it's not a matter of laying off, it's a matter of attrition and not hiring new people to fill slots as people retire.
So, Mr. Falcone, you won't be training any government workers in your retraining program.
No, but if the Nassau County has a $20 million surplus, I'm sure Bob Gaffney would be more than happy to make use of that.
You think he can help spend it?
He'll help preserve it, let's put it that way.
Have you got any ideas on how to get taxes down on Long Island?
Well, let me just, if I could jump into your question you asked Arnold just before. Where do the young kids go? I mean, I've got 3 children also. I've got a daughter who's married, has a master's in political science, works for a state senator. My other daughter works for Dean Witter. She's also a figure skating pro. My son is a senior in college and he's majoring in theater. And I hope that someday he signs a nice, lucrative recording contract, and so he can take care of Dad, because Dad and Mom has been taking care of him for a long time.
He owes you.
But if he does owe us, and but he's a good kid. They're all good. And the thing I would advise is, I think sales and marketing and business, we're getting back to the entrepreneurial type of businesses and cottage industries, and I think that's an area where we could be looking down the road. But I just want to bring in a couple of more factors that impact on this economic picture, if I could. One of the things that we really haven't even seen yet hit is the downsizing of the military. Okay. Now that's happening.
How is that going to affect us, for example?
Big time.
Well,
the downsizing of military and the closing of military bases nationwide will mean, we're not talking civilian jobs, will mean 600,000 American men and women will lose their jobs that were part of the military complex.
Okay.
That's
a national problem, because we don't really have that many here on the island.
But we will have 9,000 men and women returning to the island who will be displaced by cutbacks in the not closing of military bases, but they lost their job. They spent 10, 11, 12 years in the Army, Navy, Marines, or Air Force, and now that has been cut down. Those people will be dislocated workers. Those people, some of which are highly trained in the military. So we haven't really seen that happen yet. So we're going to get hit with that group on top of everything else. We also have a lot of those folks who have exhausted their unemployment insurance, and now they're out basically floundering around and looking for another spot where to go, and it's heartbreaking because you really don't see it. Another thing that doesn't grab the headlines of the newspapers is that when you see Grumman or AIL lay off 500 people or IBM lay off 10,000 people, and when you see that, those kind of numbers, you can't tell me that we have turned the corner in the economy. I just can't see that at all. Good companies who did well during this economic recession, now they're admitting that the recession started in '88. If you asked an economist in '88 or '89 or even early in '90, they'd say we were not in a recession at all. But now they're saying the recession started in '88. Those companies, even though they did well, are now downsizing themselves for higher corporate profits. That makes good business sense. But the 5 or 6 or 10 people that are laid off by these small little companies or groups,
You don't read about those in the headlines, but we see them at the doorstep of the Labor Department. These are part of the continuing problem of trying to help these folks get back to work.
At what point, Mr. Gruber, does laying off people stop making good business sense? I mean, we see where people are laying off. It almost seems to be a sort of a national foot race to see who can be macho enough to lay off more people than the guy next to him. Is there a point when it becomes counterproductive to lay off people and to lose that kind of sense of loyalty and security that employees build up over the years?
Well, I can tell you about my own business. Accounting normally used to have a slack time during the summer, and you would have people sitting around not being productive because there wasn't enough work during the summer to keep everybody productive. Yet during the busy season, everybody was very productive. Today, we try and manage the people and the workload so that we can utilize less people, but utilize them all year long, even during what was traditionally the slow time, at their fullest. At that point, we're now working at our maximum, and that would be the thing to do. If you let people go beyond that point, now you're not getting the work done, or you're not doing the work as well as you should be doing it, and that's when it becomes counterproductive. So there is a certain management of labor that will be productive, and then you reach a point where it does become counterproductive.
I've heard Erwin Kellner speak often of how bankers used to consider that they were in a 3-6-3 business. They took in money at 3%, lent it out at 6%, and were on the golf course at 3%. You know, and nobody really begrudged them that. They've sort of earned it because they'd worked for it over the years. Has it been taken away from the American society that people get to earn privileges by hard work over the years, or must they always have their nose to the grindstone 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week with no let-up?
I think that we find today that we're working harder to stay in the same place than we did 5 years ago, and that's what I think you're seeing today. People working harder just to stay even. I see it in my business. I see it in my clients' businesses. They're working much harder to stay in place, and in some cases, they're falling back. It's tougher to do business today than it was 5 years ago.
Do either of you see any possibility for a real big sort of boost, a quick fix here on Long Island, like magnetic levitation rail projects, or a cargo thing at Calvert and Airport, a big cargo terminal?
They've been talking about that, the maglev for long. I mean, the maglev, the whole concept of the maglev was developed right here on the island.